Hello there, pre-matriculants. Welcome to Educate. In this video, we'll be continuing with our animal nutrition playlist. Particularly, we'll be doing the absorption and assimilation of nutrients. I strongly recommend that you've already watched my previous video based on chemical digestion so that you can fully understand what we'll be doing tonight. Stay tuned. So basically, we are going to start with the absorption process. In our last video, when we talked about chemical digestion, we said that the big compounds such as the proteins, the lipids, and the carbohydrates, they need to be broken down into smaller compounds so that they can be absorbed into the blood. Why do we even eat? Remember that we eat some food so that we can gain some energy. So basically, the absorption process is basically when the nutrients from the food are being absorbed into the cells of the body so that they can be able to produce some energy. That is basically how we define absorption. So basically those proteins, carbohydrates, as well as lipids, and all of those fats and oils that you eat in your food, they need to somehow be absorbed into the blood, and they need to go to the cells of your body so that you can have some energy. You know that is the main reason that we eat, right? So now we need to know, where does this whole thing of absorption take place? Basically, absorption takes place in the small intestine. You need to remember that the small intestine, it is just found here, just below here in this region, below the large intestine. So this is where the absorption takes place. The absorption process takes place. Why is it good? Why is this the best place for absorption to take place? Because basically, the moment the food arrives here at the small intestine, the food particles are now very small enough to be absorbed. Why do I even say that they are small enough? Remember, in our previous video, when we talked about chemical digestion, we said that those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, they are broken down into their monomers, or into their smaller versions, or into their smaller compounds. Okay, so now the food particles, the moment they reach here, the small intestine, they are very small enough so that they can be able to enter into the blood. Okay, they are very small enough so that they can be able to be absorbed by the blood. Okay, because that's the whole process of absorption. We want the small food particles to be able to enter into the blood and be able to give us energy in some way. So basically, the small intestine, it is very adapted for this process. It is the best place, okay, because it is approximately 6 meters long. Basically, the small intestine is approximately 6 meters long. So this indicates that it has got a very large surface area. Okay, the fact, you know, 6 meters is a very long thing, right? I mean, like, you cannot handle anything that's 6 meters long, for real. So basically, the small intestine having so much length, or being so long, it actually makes it a good place enough for absorption. There is enough space so that the food particles can be able to enter into the blood, or they can be absorbed into the blood. One of the other things that make it more suitable is that this small intestine, it has got transverse folds on its walls. So basically, when you're having the small intestine, let's just say this is your small intestine, we are zooming it in. So on its walls, there are these things that are known as transverse folds. Okay, transverse folds. So these transverse folds kind of give enough space for what? Enough space for absorption as well. So it can count as a reason that to make the small intestine the best place, or the most suitable place for what for absorption to take place. Okay, so there are transverse folds on its walls. We are going to go into the details later on what do we find on the walls of small intestines that make it possible for absorption to take place. And also, one of the other thing is that the small intestine has got millions of villi. So there is this structure that is known as villi that is found at the walls of the small intestine. Basically, that's where the transverse folds is coming from. So this villi, we are going to look at it also carefully. What is its whole purpose? But in short, you just need to know that this villi, it is found on the walls, and its purpose, it is the one that actually absorbs the nutrients. Okay, so when they ask you to give the structural suitability of a small intestine, or if they say structural adaptation, they just want you to explain why do you think the small intestine is the best place for absorption to take place. You just need to tell us of a large surface area. You need to tell us that it is 6 meters long. You need to tell us that it has got a transverse fold on its walls. It also has got millions of villi, the structure that will be the one that will absorb the nutrients. But now let's get deep into this villi thing. What is this villi that absorbs the nutrients? Basically, if it is one, it is known as the villus. Okay, so the singular form, it is the villus, but in plural we say it's villi. So I'll just write here so that you don't get confused. So the plural of villus, we say it is villi. So when there are many villuses, we are going to call them villi, not villuses. Okay, so basically the villi or the villus, basically these are finger-like projections that are responsible for nutrient absorption. So basically, for you to be able to, for your body, njalo, to be able to absorb the nutrients, the villus is the one that is responsible for absorbing those nutrients. Okay, they look like fingers. That's why they say they are finger-like projections. That's it, they are fingers. In reality, they look like this. So basically, in your small intestine, the walls of your small intestines, they've got these finger-like projections. So these finger-like projections, they are known as the villi. The villi in plural, but if it's one, it is the villus. So for grade 11, you are going to be able to study the structure of a villus. You are going to see the parts in the villus that make it suitable for absorption. Because the whole process here, or the whole purpose of this thing, it is to take the nutrients from the food and absorb them into the blood. So in reality, this is how your small intestine looks like inside. That's one. So this is how it looks like in a diagrammatic way. Usually we are going to use this diagram to be able to explain how the villus works. Okay, so now let's look at the structures of the villus that are responsible for absorptions. So most of the times when they ask such questions, guys, it's not like you don't know them. Most of the times you know the question, you know the answer, but you don't really understand the question. When they ask it, they would be like, give us the adaptations, or they can say the structural adaptations of the villus for absorption. When they say structural adaptations, or when they say a structural suitability, any kind of words such as structural adaptation, normal structural suitability, what are they talking about there? They want you to just explain the villus. What do we find in the villus that make it able to absorb some nutrients? Okay, so here that's what you need to explain. Simply that. All right, so you just need to explain the parts, each and every part of the villus, and what it is responsible for. Those two things. Usually those are 2 marks question. So they will ask you with him, what are the structural adaptations of the villus for absorption? They want to know with it, what do we find in the villus that is responsible for absorption, and what role does it play in absorption? Simply that. So we are going to start with the most common thing that you can see here. So surrounding the villus, you can see that we're having this thing that is known as the epithelial cells. Okay, so the epithelial cells here, you can see they are the ones that are so many here. These ones, these structures, all of these are epithelial cells. All of these are epithelial cells. So the epithelial cells are responsible for surrounding this villus. But why are they even surrounding the villus? We actually call them the epithelium altogether. We just call it the epithelium. Okay, the epithelium, just to say that there are many. You don't really have to say the epithelial cells. No, when you say the epithelium, we're just talking about the epithelial cells themselves. Okay, so the epithelium is only one cell layer thick, allowing nutrients to pass through easily. So when they are marking this, they look at these following things. When you say that the epithelium is only one cell layer thick, it simply means that here we only find one layer of cells. Okay, you can just see this is only one layer of cells. The one that I'm highlighting, this is only one layer of cells. So basically, if there is only one layer of these epithelial cells, it means that the food can be able to enter easily, because the whole purpose here is for the food to be able to enter into the what? Into the villus and be absorbed into the blood. So basically, the epithelial cells is only one cell layer thick. It simply means that it only consists of a line that has got only one cell. It doesn't have stacks of cells, okay? It doesn't have many other epithelial cells here that are just lining up, making it more thicker and thicker and thicker, okay? That will make it hard for the food to be able to enter into the villus, okay? So basically, it is only one cell layer thick, or you can say that the epithelium is a thin layer. Okay, to make it simple, just say the epithelium is a thin layer. Basically, these epithelial cells, they allow food to be able to enter. Okay, they allow food to be able to enter because it's only one cell in one place. It's not like we've got a stack of cells here that are preventing food from entering into the blood, because that's the whole purpose, guys, of absorption. This villus thing, it is responsible for doing what? For absorbing nutrients into the blood. So basically, it needs to be able to allow nutrients to be able to get into it. So basically, this villus thing that you can see here, the epithelial cells surrounding it, it's a thin layer. It's not really that much thick. Okay. And what does this help us with? It allows the nutrients to pass through easily. So basically, if we've got some nutrients, maybe some glucose, okay, let's just say we've got some glucose molecules here. These glucose molecules will be able to pass through these epithelial cells because they are only a thin layer. They are only one cell layer thick, or you can say they are a thin layer for simple English purposes, okay? So when you explain this question, you need to give two things. You need to tell us the structure, and you need to tell us the advantage or the adaptation on it. For example, here we say that the epithelium is only one cell layer thick, or you can say that the epithelium is a thin layer. So what? This allows nutrients to pass through easily. That's how you get the 2 marks. You cannot just tell me the epithelium is a thin layer. What does that help us with? You need to be able to give a cause and an effect. You need to be able to explain with him why is it important, whatever that you've mentioned. So in this case, you mentioned that the epithelium is thinner. Normally, it is only one cell layer thick, or you can say it is a thin layer. The epithelium is a thin layer, allowing nutrients to pass through easily. That will give you a full 2 marks. So this is just the outer part. The other thing that we need to know about the epithelium, it has got many mitochondria. So the epithelial cells, they contain many mitochondria. Okay, that's the first mark. You point out something that you know about the epithelium. It has got many mitochondria. So what? Why is this important? Why do we need to have many mitochondria? Or what is the significance of having many mitochondria? It is to supply energy for the absorption of nutrients. Remember that in grade 10 you have learned of the cell. Basically, you know that the mitochondrion, it is the powerhouse of a cell. Okay, the mitochondrion is responsible for supplying energy to the cells of the body. Okay, so here, if our epithelium cells, or if our epithelial cells, basically, they've got many mitochondria in them, it means that there's a greater supply of energy, because these mitochondria, their whole purpose, it is to produce energy for the cell. When you do cellular respiration later on in term 3, you will understand what is the role of mitochondria in all of this. But basically, this mitochondria is a responsibility. It is to supply and produce energy, because this absorption process, it requires energy. Okay, it is an active process. It requires some energy. You cannot just tell me that these glucose molecules will be just able to get into the blood easily. They need some energy. So where does the energy come from? The epithelium, or you can say the epithelial cells surrounding the villus, they have got many mitochondria, and we know that the mitochondria are supplying energy. So when you answer this, it's 2 marks. You explain fully the epithelium contains many mitochondria. Don't just stop there. That's not going to be a full 2 marks. You need to explain what is the significance, or what is the purpose of having so many mitochondria. So the epithelium contains many mitochondria to do what? To supply energy for the absorption of nutrients, because this active absorption will require some energy to happen. So now we've already explained the epithelial cells and their function. So whenever they ask you adaptations, or whenever they ask you structural suitability, such words, they're just trying to say, what structures do we have in your diagram, and what is their responsibility? What are their responsibilities, or what do they do, or how do they facilitate this process of absorption? Talk about goblet cells. So as much as you can see that we've got epithelial cells here, they all look alike, but here we've got cells that are kind of different. These cells that I'm highlighting here, they are kind of different compared to the other cells within this line. Okay, these cells here, they are different, and you can see these cells, they are known as the goblet cell. So the goblet cells, they are also found within the epithelium, but there are less of them. You can see that you can even count them here. There are less goblet cells, the one that I've highlighted with yellow. Okay, there are less of them. So these goblet cells, they do something, or they are very important as well. What do? They secrete mucus. Remember that mucus, it is just a liquid that comes similar to the one that comes out from your nose. Okay, you can call them amafinyela, amakhovula, whatever you call them in your language, but basically mucus, it comes out of the goblet cells. Okay, so these goblet cells, they produce mucus. You are not done answering. Now you need to explain what is this, what's the importance of producing mucus. Like if these goblet cells, or if these cells here that you can see here are producing the mucus, what is its purpose? Remember that mucus is a fluid. Okay, it looks like water, and like imans, yeah, well, it looks like water. So basically, since it looks like water, it means that it keeps the surface moist, and this will allow nutrients to be dissolved and to be absorbed. So basically, for the nutrients to be able to enter into the blood, they need to be dissolved. Okay, we need a moist environment. Okay, we need a wet environment. In simple English, I'm trying to say that we need a wet environment. So in this case, the goblet cells that we are finding lining around these villus, they do what? They secrete mucus. Mucus is just a fluid. The one that comes out from your nose, the one that is that you guys kind of don't like, I don't know, the one that is kind of disgusting, but that is the mucus that we're talking about here. So these goblet cells, they are secreting a lot of mucus around this villi, around these villus. Okay, so it's a lot of mucus that is being secreted by these goblet cells. For what purpose? The mucus is a fluid, so it will keep the surface moist. Okay, you can say that it will lubricate the surface. You can say it is lubricating the surface, or it is keeping the surface moist enough. Why must the surface be wet or moist? So that when this glucose and all of these nutrients are trying to enter into the blood, they are dissolved first. You know, it is easier for something that is dissolved to enter into the blood than something that is not dissolved. So they need to be dissolved. So this mucus, it will dissolve these nutrients, or these smaller compounds that need to enter into the blood. So the goblet cells, they secrete mucus. And what is the main aim for the mucus? It is to keep the surface moist, and also to allow nutrients to be dissolved and to be absorbed perfectly. So the goblet cells are important. They are secreting mucus to dissolve the dissolve the nutrients first before they are absorbed. We also have got blood capillaries. Now we get inside the villi. So we have got these are the blood capillaries here. Let me just try to highlight. So these are blood capillaries. These are blood capillaries. So the blood capillaries, you can see as they are labeled in this diagram, they are the ones kind of making an arc or a circular shape or something like this. The one that I'm highlighting with blue, these are known as the blood capillaries. Blood capillaries, basically, you need to know, you remember from grade 10, you did veins, arteries, and capillaries, right? Blood capillaries, they just carry the blood just like any other vein or artery. Okay, so the blood capillaries, they do what? They actively absorb, and they also transport glucose and amino acids. Remember, in the chemical digestion video, I explained to you that the carbohydrates, they are not absorbed exactly as they are. They need to be broken down into glucose. Okay, please watch that video first so that you understand what I'm talking about here. So the glucose, it is the one that will be absorbed into the blood capillaries. Okay, that will be absorbed and transported by these blood capillaries, as well as the amino acids. Remember, the amino acids, they are the monomers of proteins. It is what we get when we break down proteins. So the amino acids and the glucose molecules, they need to be absorbed. Absorbed where? Absorbed into the blood capillaries. These ones that are surrounding the villus as well, that are making an arc shape. These are all blood capillaries. These are just like pipes, guys. These are just like pipes that are carrying the blood, okay? Because that's the whole purpose, is to absorb the nutrients into the blood. So what are we doing here? We are using the blood capillaries to absorb. That's why they say adaptation. How is the villus adapted for absorption? You are explaining, was it the villus has got blood capillaries. You can see these are blood capillaries, and what is their function? It is to do what? It is to actively absorb. Please use this word actively, it's very important. It's not just to absorb, it's to actively absorb. When you say that they are actively absorbing, it simply means that they are using a lot of energy. And remember that we've already said that the epithelium is the one supplying energy from its many mitochondria, right? So here you are saying what? The blood capillaries, they actively absorb. So the first mark, when we are marking here, what are we going to say? The first mark here will be here on the blood capillaries. The villus has got many blood capillaries. You have stated the statement. Now tell us, what's the significance of these blood capillaries, or what do they help us in this absorption thing? It is to do what? They actively absorb. Actively, meaning that they use a lot of energy. Actively absorb and transport glucose as well as amino acids. So we now know where does glucose and amino acids go. After it is broken down by the enzymes, it will now be absorbed into the blood capillaries. But remember that we don't only have got glucose and amino acids, we've got a list of things. Remember, we've got glucose, right? We've got glucose, the one that comes from carbohydrates. We've got amino acids, the one that come from proteins. We also have got fatty acids and glycerol. Remember that the fatty acids and glycerol, they come from the what? They come from the lipids. We did this in the last video and say that the fatty acids and glycerol, they come from the lipids. Now we are done absorbing glucose and amino acids into the blood capillaries. Now you ask yourself, where will these fatty acids and glycerol go? Because not every nutrient goes into the what? Not every nutrient goes into the blood capillaries. So now you ask yourself, where does these fatty acids and the glycerol go? Because remember that the fatty acids and glycerol, they are coming from lipids, right? It's like when you break down a lipid, you are going to get 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. I repeat for the millionth time, watch the video on chemical digestion and understand what are these things. By the way, this is your grade 10, okay? Basically, the fatty acids and the glycerol, what do they do? Where do they go? We have got a lacteal. Okay, so the villus contains a lacteal. That's one more thing. So the villus contains the lacteal. So the lacteal, it is this one that is standing straight here. Okay, so let me just wrap off the other highlights here and kind of highlight it on its own. So when we're talking about the lacteal, we are talking about this part, this one that is standing straight here. See, this one is the lacteal, the one that is standing vertical. This is the lacteal. This is the lacteal. So when I talk about the lacteal is also acting like a blood vessel. Okay, it's also acting like a blood vessel, but we don't call it a blood capillary. It's known as a lacteal. Okay, so the lacteal, what does it do basically? The lacteal is the one that will now absorb the lipids. You can say the lipids, or you can say fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so the fatty acids and glycerol will now go to the what? They will now go to the lacteal. So now we know where they go. So you can see each and every nutrient, it has got somewhere to go into the blood. Okay, and then when we are absorbing here the lipids, it's a passive absorption. Okay, when you say that it's a passive absorption, simply means that you don't really require that much energy. It happens on its own, doesn't require energy. It's a passive process. Okay, so the villus has got the lacteal, that is a mark, and then now you explain what does it help having the lacteal. It is to passively absorb and transport lipids. That is the second mark. When they give you 2 marks to mention the adaptations, or the structural suitability of the villus for absorption, you need to explain these things. This is another one that you can mention. The villus has got microvilli. So we've got microvilli, we've got smaller other microvilli, okay? The villus has got microvilli. Okay, it's not indicated in this diagram. You can hear it's microvilli, it's microscopic. You can't really see it, but there is a lot of other smaller villi that is found around the villus. So one big villus has got a lot of microvilli surrounding it. What is the significance, or what is the benefit of having this microvilli? It is to increase the surface area for an effective absorption to take place. Basically, these microvilli, they kind of make a greater space. They kind of increase the surface area. Okay, so basically, when they ask you adaptations for the villus or the structural adaptations, you need to explain. It's 2 marks. You need to explain, give us a structure and give us its function. The epithelium has got a thin layer. This allows nutrients to pass through easily. The epithelium contains many mitochondria. These mitochondria will produce or supply more energy so that there can be absorption of nutrients, active absorption. There are goblet cells which secrete mucus. So what? This mucus will keep the surface moist, allowing nutrients to be dissolved and absorbed. The villus has got blood capillaries. That's 1 mark. So what? Why do we need these blood capillaries to do what? To actively absorb and transport glucose and amino acids. Because after you have eaten, the proteins have broken down to amino acids, the carbohydrates broken down into glucose. That glucose and amino acids, they need to go into the blood capillaries. They need to be transported, go somewhere else. Okay, and then the fatty acids and the glycerol, which are coming from the lipids, they need to be transported by the lacteal. So in your answer, you say the villus contains the lacteal to passively absorb and transport lipids. The villus contains microvilli, and what does the microvilli do? It increases the surface area for effective absorption. So you give an adaptation, then you explain how significant it is to the villus for the whole process. Okay, and then after that, now we can look at the transport of glucose and amino acids. Where are these glucose and amino acids transported to? Because now remember that in the absorption process, we have said that the glucose and amino acids, they will go into the blood capillaries. Okay, so glucose and amino acids, they usually show arrows, they go into the blood capillaries. Okay, I don't know, my arrows are wrong here, but basically the glucose and amino acids, they go here into the blood capillaries. So now that the glucose and amino acids, they now go and they are absorbed into the blood capillaries, where are they transported to? Because remember that the glucose and amino acids, we need them so that you can gain some energy. The whole purpose of this absorption thing is for your cells to be able to produce some energy so that you can be able to do work. Okay, that's why you eat. I'm giving you a reason to eat now, to eat more. Okay, so now where is this transported?
Hey Lapo, I know that you've been enjoying this wonderful video, and most likely you've been enjoying watching this handsome face in front of you, but sorry ladies, I'm taken. I just here to tell you that Educate is on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So please click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you get notifications whenever I post new videos. I want you guys to pass. Okay, so if you make my dream true, I reach 100k subscribers, I will make your dreams come true. I will even get you to varsity. I will get you with 7 distinctions. Yes.
So the amino acids and the glucose, they are absorbed into the blood capillaries of the villi in the small intestine. That is what we've covered just now, to say that the glucose and amino acids, they go into the blood capillaries. They are absorbed into the blood capillaries. So now these blood capillaries, they join together. So it's like you're having these blood capillaries from the villus, and then they join together. They join together to do what? To form one big venule. So these are the blood capillaries that are coming from the villus. Okay, so this is your blood capillaries. They are coming from the villus, and they contain some glucose and amino acids in them. Okay, so now they do what? They join together to form this one large venule, it is known as the hepatic portal vein. So they form a hepatic portal vein. So they join together, these capillaries, these blood capillaries coming from the villus, they join together, they form large venules that forms this hepatic portal vein. Okay, this is just a simplified diagram, it's not really accurate. Okay, so now after joining together to form this hepatic portal vein, what does it do? They transport the amino acids and the glucose to the liver. When the glucose and the amino acids, they are absorbed at the small intestine or at the villus, they now are transported by the blood capillaries, which join to form this hepatic portal vein, and they transport the glucose and amino acids to the what? To the liver. So the liver, it is the destination for glucose and amino acids. Now, the glucose and amino acids, they will flow through a what? They will flow through a hepatic vein to the heart. So this is just telling you now, Uzi, how does the glucose and amino acids get to the heart now? Okay, so now we are coming from the liver, now they go to the heart. Okay, so they will move, the glucose and amino acids, they will now move from the liver and they will go to the heart through the what? Through the hepatic portal vein. Or the hepatic vein, just hepatic vein, don't call it portal. Okay, it's the hepatic vein, and they go to the heart. Now the liver, why did the glucose and the amino acids need to go to the liver? Because we say that the glucose and amino acids, they'll go to the liver first. Why did they need to go to the liver? Basically, the liver, what does it do? Remember that you have learned, I think you have learned of homeostasis. Yes, you have learned of homeostasis. What the liver, it can store some glucose in form of glycogen. So basically, the liver will take the excess glucose. So after all the glucose have been used up, because remember that the glucose needs to go to the cells and needs to produce some energy. So let's just say maybe we needed 50,000 joules of glucose to produce energy in the cells, and then maybe when you have ate a lot of sugar, something that has got a lot of sugar inside it, and then maybe that thing contains 60,000 joules of glucose. So basically, when the cells use up the 50,000, what will happen to the other 10,000? Because basically you've eaten a lot of food. Most of the times when you're buying food, you need to look at the nutrition list. You need to look, how much energy does that food produce first before you eat. Okay, you see energy drinks, they produce a lot of energy. Cold drinks, they've got a lot of energy as well. All right, so basically the energy here, let's just say when you have eaten something that contains a lot of energy, all right, and a lot of glucose. So after the cells use up the 50,000 that they need, the 10,000 joules, let's just say the 10,000 joules of glucose, they will now go back to the liver. So they will now go back to the liver, and then the liver will convert this excess glucose or this extra glucose, because it's more than enough, right? They will convert it into glycogen and store it in the liver. So basically, the glucose, the remaining 10,000 joules of glucose here, they will go to the liver. They will be stored as glycogen. And then now the excess amino acids, let's just say maybe the amino acids, the same case scenario, let's just say enough amino acids have been used. Maybe your cells required 70,000 amino acids, and then when you eat a lot of food such that you've got maybe 100,000 amino acids, so it means that there's an extra 30,000 amino acids. So that extra amino acids, that extra 30,000 amino acids, they're actually deaminated by the liver to form urea. When you say that the liver is deaminating the amino acids, it simply means that it is breaking them down. Okay, deamination. And then when they are broken down, they will form what we call urea. The urea is actually a waste product that actually needs to get out of the body. Basically, urea, it is found within your urine. Basically, you can see the word urea and urine, they kind of align, right? Basically, urea and uric acid, they are found within your urine. So basically, your urine is actually consisting of amino acids that have been deaminated by the liver. We use the term deaminated. Don't say broken down. So the 30,000 amino acids, the extra 30,000 amino acids here, they will be done what? They will be broken down into what? Into forming the urea. And this urea will be your waste product, the one that will exit, removed from your body through urine. So when you are urinating, you are taking out those extra amino acids because you have eaten a lot of food. So whenever you eat, you need to look at your nutrition list. And then this last simple process that we're going to do for this video is going to be the assimilation process. And remember, after we have absorbed these nutrients into the blood, now assimilation is the incorporation of absorbed nutrients into the cells of the body. So now we have reached our destination. Remember that we have said that the whole purpose of eating is so that you gain energy, and this energy is produced by your cells. Okay, the energy is produced by your cells, grade 11. So basically here, assimilation is this incorporation of absorbed nutrients into the cells of the body, simply meaning that now we want the glucose and all those absorbed nutrients to go into the cells of the body. That is assimilation process. Okay, that's known as we say that the nutrients are assimilating because they are going to the cells of the body in simple English terms. So for example, the muscle cells, they absorb glucose to do what? To provide energy. As I've already told you guys that the glucose that you eat a lot of food that contains carbohydrates so that you can gain some energy. So the muscle cells of your body, for example, they absorb the glucose from the food that you eat, and they do what? They provide some energy. They produce some energy from the glucose. And that process is known as cellular respiration, something that you will do in term 3, basically. So muscle cells, they absorb the glucose, they provide and they produce energy from that glucose. So the glucose that the food that we are eating, we want to get some energy from it. The liver also plays a vital role in the assimilation of nutrients. Let's see the role of the liver. So the liver has got 3 functions. The function of the liver is the metabolism of glucose. That's the first one. Remember, basically, the liver is the one that takes the glucose and stores it as glycogen, the excess glucose. So whenever you have got extra sugar within your blood, that sugar will be let's just call it sugar for now, but it's glucose in life sciences terms. So whenever you've got some extra sugar in your blood, let's just say when you like eating things that are sweet, you go and buy a lot of sweets, you go and buy something that has got sugar, you drink a lot of tea, and then you eat a lot of sugar. That extra sugar or that extra glucose, it is stored by the liver. So that's the function of the liver, the metabolism of glucose. That's the first thing. The other thing is the deamination of amino acids. As I already said, that if we're having extra amino acids, what will happen to those amino acids? They will be deaminated by the liver so that they can form urea. The urea will be just a waste product, the one that will be removed from your body through urine. So when you're urinating, you are actually taking out some amino acids that have been deaminated. So use the term deaminated. Don't use another term. Deamination of amino acids simply means that the amino acids are being broken down to form urea, which is a waste product that needs to be removed from your body. And also the other function of a liver is to break down alcohol and to also break down drugs as well as hormones. So you can just say the liver has got quite a couple of 4 functions or 5 functions. Okay, so when you are drinking alcohol, the alcohol needs to be broken down. The alcohol cannot be absorbed into your blood. Alcohol is actually not for the body, in my opinion, whatever. But basically, the liver is the one that breaks down alcohol, because alcohol is actually a chemical, right? So it is broken down by the liver. So most of the times you will hear the people that get liver disease or the people that suffer from liver conditions, they drink a lot of alcohol. The people that drink a lot of alcohol, maybe even alcohol addicts, yes, alcohol addicts, they're at a higher risk of destroying their liver, because the liver is the one that is responsible for breaking down the alcohol. For example, this image that I've pasted here is a good depiction of the liver's function. Okay, so basically, the more you are abusing alcohol, whenever you drink more alcohol and alcohol into your body, you are making your liver to suffer or your liver to die, because the liver is the one that has the function to break down the alcohol even drugs, any form of drugs that you intake into your body that are not good, that are not going to be absorbed into the blood, they need to be broken down by your liver. So alcohol and drugs, they usually lead to liver disease in most cases. And that's how we conclude our session for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for our next video.